We're gonna round out this morning by pulling back a little bit and talking about the larger issue for agencies, always probably from the beginning of the agency history, but now perhaps more than ever, which is what is the relevance of agencies altogether. Let me bring in my colleague Steve McClellan, who's the editor of MediaPost Agency Daily. Steve, you there? I see Barry. I see Skylar.
Hello,
Steve. How you doing?
I'm terrific. How are you doing?
All right. Good to see you again. Where are we finding you today?
I'm in New York.
You're in New York.
Yeah.
And it's snowed in. You in Manhattan?
Yeah, I'm in Manhattan. It's very quiet. Still, I think the snow is still coming down, but it's tapered off quite a bit. So probably by the weekend, you'll not even know there was a blizzard here.
So Steve, before we kick off the panel, we want to poll our audience again on their thoughts about agency relevance. So let's bring up our poll question to kick off this panel. And the question is, what are the biggest challenges to retaining your clients? And of course, you can check multiple boxes here. But our first is more clients in-housing more of their media creative tasks. Are we seeing, as we have been seeing, or at least a lot of clients threatening to do so? Are they doing so? Does this pose a major challenge to you? Growing disbelief in the traditional agency model altogether. A question, again, that's been with us for decades, but in many ways we're seeing it reiterated again, especially as the technologies allow a lot of the brands to bring this stuff closer to home. Concerns over fee structures and transparency. The issue that was sort of headlines 2 years ago, I'm not sure how well agencies and holding companies have addressed these so far, but it's still there. Increasingly aggressive competition from other agencies and consultancies. Again, another story that we've covered ad infinitum over the last couple of years, the ways in which consulting companies especially have been moving in, opening up agency units. Steve, what do you hear from a lot of the people you're reporting on when it comes to this question?
Well, what I'm hearing is that even though there's a fair amount of in-housing going on, particularly on the digital side, in a lot of cases, the agencies are actually helping facilitate those in-housing efforts, just because the clients need guidance doing that. And I'm also hearing that, the vast majority of clients out there, even if they're in-housing a portion of digital or planning or whatever they're in-housing, they're still relying on agencies to a very great extent in terms of carrying out their entire marketing plan and execution. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, in-housing is there. It's important, but it's just one of the pieces, one of the many pieces that go into the whole marketing strategy.
Let's close the poll and see the final results. Although it still seems to be a major challenge, even though I agree that this is what I hear when I talk to agencies, there's a lot more hybridized efforts and a lot of agencies who are finding their ways, and I speak to a lot of brands themselves who have actually moved back after in-housing, moved back to their agencies because they just found it too difficult and too cumbersome, especially when it came to hiring people. But 70% of our attendees cite more clients in-housing than ever. But also, transparency is still an issue for close to half, but less so the issue of the larger questioning of the agency model. So an interesting set of questions, and it's fascinating that the agency model, which is probably a question that I've seen most of in the last year, is probably the one that people are least worried about right now.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think, going forward, one of the benefits of a digital world is that there's not going to be one model. There's a lot of flexibility there to provide adaptability in whatever models clients, see fit to utilize.
So let me shut up and get out of the way and let you guys, let the experts take over on this. I'll hand it over to you now, Steve. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And thanks everybody. I'd like to thank everybody who's tuned in, and we have a great panel here, and I will just introduce them very quickly, and we'll get into a discussion. We have Barry Lowenthal, CEO, The Media Kitchen, and we have Skylar Mattson, who is president of WONGDOODY, and Justin Thomas-Copeland, CEO, DDB North America. Hi, Barry. I don't see, oh, there they are. Justin, Skylar, hello, how are you?
Hi.
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. Well, thanks for participating in this panel. It's greatly appreciated. And yeah, you heard some of the introductory remarks, and I think I'd like to just sort of back up a little bit, and because 2020 was such a crazy year, and is obviously going to impact the year ahead. So I wanted to talk a little bit first about getting your view and perspective on how 2020 and all of its upheavals, COVID, social justice, politics, the biggest impacts from last year, the one or two really standout impacts on you from a couple of different angles. One as a leader, second on your agency, and third, the industry more broadly. Who would like to tackle that one first? How about, Barry raised his hand. Okay, go for it, Barry.
Is that how we're going to do it? We're going to raise hands to be called on? Okay, glad I know about that.
So that's a big question, Steve, and maybe I'll do part of it and then I'll pass it over and then maybe we'll bounce around.
Yeah.
Rather than me try to do all of those things.
Sure.
So I think upon reflection, so last year sucked, and hopefully this year will be a little bit better, although who knows. It's still, it's still tough out there. I think that for me personally, from a leadership standpoint, it was a really, it really forced me to kind of reimagine what kind of a leader I wanted to be. I was so used to walking around and talking to people and stopping at people's desks and, really kind of enjoying the open plan. I mean, I don't think I've had a desk since I was a media planner, back at Gray, and I didn't even know when that was, like 1989. And so, and then all of a sudden that went away, and I couldn't do that anymore. And I needed to kind of figure out how I wanted to stay connected to the staff, because all the ways that I used to do, just went away. Slack and text and workplace chats just didn't cut it. And, it takes a long time to have one-on-one phone calls with, over 100 people. That's just not really feasible either. So I kind of had to reimagine how I wanted to contribute to the agency. And one of the things that I think quickly realized was that connections happen within teams, and the best teams are often the smallest teams. And so what we did was, rather than try and rely on me to bring the agency together all the time, we wound up relying on the individual teams to sort of bring the agency together. And so instead of doing like top down, we went bottom up, and we moved that way really quickly. And that, I think, protected a lot of people because it gave them the support they needed, and it gave them the connections that they wanted while they were all starting to learn how to be like hermits at home. And then my role became more, trying to bring people together in public spaces and sort of talk about what our experiences were, and getting people to talk about their experiences working within teams. So it kind of really just changed the way that we thought about our culture, our connections, and how we protected and nurtured our people.
Well, that's interesting. And when you say teams, how did you organize the teams? Was it, client teams or departmental teams, or how did it work?
Yeah, so one of the things that are really, I think, different about Media Kitchen is that we have a very horizontal structure. So every client is assigned to a team, and that team is very sort of self-contained. It's responsible for negotiating the fee and staffing the team and managing strategy and planning and investment and analytics. So it's very much a self-contained team. And so when I talk about team structure, it's those people that are assigned to a team that are assigned to a client and make that client business run smoothly.
Got it. Great. Skylar, talk about how last year sort of impacted you as a leader.
Yeah, as I'm thinking back, I've always thought leaders needed to have the answers and have a plan and instill confidence and really optimism. And as I think back to last year, I really learned that transparency is maybe most important out of everything, because there were so many times where I didn't have the answers, or what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. And I think becoming comfortable with admitting that was one of the things that I'm going to take away from the year and I'm going to carry with me. I think the second thing is just empathy. We used to sort of be able to work and put our work life here, and things that happen at home are over here, and things that are happening out in the world are over here. But everything became such a blend, and I think expecting people to separate what was happening in the world or happening with their families from what we're asking them to do and sort of show up on the business each day is impossible. And being empathetic to that is another major lesson from 2020.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, having all the answers, that would be pretty brilliant. That's a lot of pressure on a person. So yeah, I think that's a valuable lesson learned. Justin, how about you?
2020 was a lot to learn, a lot to take on board for everyone. I think I'll probably talk from an industry standpoint, given that's the one that's maybe not been tackled. One of the things that we learned was, and I learned personally, was to put the human back into our industry, like put people at the center, and put trust in your people. I think when sort of COVID happened and we all had to change our working habits, clients were trying to work out what was happening in their organizations. Business was sort of down, then it was back up, then we weren't sure. We were putting a lot of trust at that time in our people to stay close to their clients, to help their clients, and also to figure out their own teams and how they were going to organize their work. I think agencies, we love the people aspect of our business. We love when our teams are together in the room. Suddenly that just evaporated. There's panic. What about the teams? How are we looking after our people? How are we going to do the work? All these questions arise. And what we did, and what I personally learned, was to really put a lot of trust back in people to figure it out, give them support, give them space to do that, and just take a really human approach to that. Don't get into process, don't get into KPIs, get into space and get into people sort of having time to figure out how they're going to reorganize themselves and just be there to enable them. And I think that's a good lesson for the industry, that we are malleable, we're flexible, we're dynamic, but you got to give people the space to do that. And that's one of the things that I learned and definitely try to put to practice.
Excellent. I think just, since we're talking about, impact and the way we've sort of changed working, is there, like going forward, is there any doubt that the working model, the sort of work from home model, will be to some degree built in, to the way you work permanently, or as far as you can see at this point? Does anyone want to take that one?
Our employees are certainly enjoying the flexibility of remote work. And I think that our reality moving forward will be a blend. There are times where I think we all miss it, when you're around the table and you're ideating, and that magic only happens when you can see each other and you can laugh with one another, or you can write on a giant wall instead of being confined to whatever room you're hiding from your children in at that moment. But I do expect that we'll move toward a blend. And I think for our industry, that's a real positive shift. We are known for not having work-life balance. And I think a combination of both remote and in-person work will allow for more of that.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. I think the blend, we're hearing from our people that they love the flexibility. They love sort of this new way of working. They've got used to it and they've mastered how they do that. You know, children run in, dogs bark, it's all good. They like that human aspect to it. No one's trying to sort of shush and go on mute, you know, in like 0.2 seconds. And that's all great, but they do miss being in an office. They miss not the office space, they miss the people. They miss the energy. And so I think we're definitely going to see an industry that's going to be much more blended. And there's opportunity in that because it also opens the doors for talent to come from different places. Because there is that blend, then there's a lot more flexibility about where do you find great people. It doesn't have to be in your immediate market. And so it opens up channels of different types of creativity and thinking to come into the business. So we're also seeing the opportunity and the upside as part of that.
I mean, yeah, I guess you literally can hire someone anywhere in the world to work in a function if they fit in that function, right?
Absolutely, you'll drive HR crazy, but they'll find a way. But yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
There's no limits to pipelining. There's no limits to where you hire from. You know, so it's truly, I think, opened up the global market idea. I think it's getting more and more real. So that's an opportunity.
Okay.
I mean, we completely agree, but I was having a conversation with somebody just the other day about some of his struggles working from home. And this was somebody who is really dynamic and really charismatic. And it's just that classic ad guy who, you know, walks into a room and immediately commands attention and everybody sort of focuses on them. And, you know, there's like that archetype that I think a lot of us try and cast, particularly in new business. And all of a sudden that is a lot less relevant. Like nobody's walking into a room in a video, you know, like I'm sitting here and I'm struggling with the sun that's in my face. And so I think that, you know, along with trying to figure out what this right blend is, which of course is the way it's going to go, is what are the right skills that we're going to be looking for as we sort of move into this new blended era, because a lot of the things that we so focused on before when we were in person are going to become a lot less important.
That's a great point.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, switching gears a little bit. I mean, obviously, everybody learned a lot last year. There was kind of no way around it, really. And I'm curious, you know, just pick one, you know, one or two of sort of key lessons learned in 2020 that will drive your agency's strategy / success this year and beyond. And this time, let's start with Skylar.
It's a great question. There are a couple areas. I think the first is in showing business value to our clients. I mean, so much of what we do, marketing, is driving top line revenue. But we're now looking at offering bottom line efficiencies. So not only how do we connect with their customers to drive sales, but how are their employees working? So we're now creating plans around employee experience, or how can we make the process of working with partners or vendors more efficient? So a little more B2B, but really focusing on overall business value, both revenue and operational efficiencies. I think the second area is the demand from clients. We just saw in the poll we all took, to be transparent on costs, and then not only be transparent, but then lower it a whole bunch. So how do we create a structure and staffing models with lower cost talent? And so one of the things we're looking at is entry-level talent, and how do we provide the training and the skill set for them to quickly get ready to serve clients. And we're also looking at offshore models. How do we incorporate offshore to help deliver some of the things that we're doing at scale? And these are things that we had started thinking about a couple of years ago when we were acquired by Infosys, but 2020 really caused us to take a hard look at and incorporate into our ways of working.
Yeah, no, I mean, you mentioned talent, and we'll get into that more a little bit, but that's always been an issue, I think, for the agency world, and it's interesting to see how you're sort of getting a handle on that. Justin.
I mean, I would definitely double down on business outcomes. I think Skylar spoke well to that. That's definitely something that we are focused on. But one of the other things was, going back to who we are, we're a creative business, DDB. I think creativity and the role that creativity can play in business, we really doubled down on that. We took that to clients proactively. We turned up with new conversations. We looked at how we could take their brand, how we could take some of, for retailers, for example, their commerce strategies, their loyalty strategies, different strategies that typically you wouldn't expect a creative agency to be overly concerned with. But we were talking to them about creating like systems thinking for their brands and where we would take the brands and being holistic. And I think the creativity that we brought to those conversations reminded us that that's something that, although we embrace clients who in-house, and clients are changing as well, they're hiring different types of people, they're still looking for agencies for that creative value add that they can't do internally. And so that was one of the lessons that we took, that we've got to go back to who we are, make sure that we are rolling that out in interesting ways to clients. And it gave rise to a number of C-suite conversations and new opportunities. We were also using this whole 2020 experience to question models. Clients were more open for new ideas because they just understood that their whole business models had been turned upside down, and things that they weren't indexing on before were suddenly super important to their business. So we were able to sort of start new conversations, whether that was around strategy, around creative content, looking at different ways that we were trying to spark their consumers and spark their brands. And that was all stemming from creativity. And so we've just made sure that we don't forget that, that we are a creative business, and they don't know how to recreate that inside their organizations. So we brought a lot of that to our clients proactively. We were just sort of, not waiting for the briefs. It was like a mindset we had, and it stood us in good stead. It was good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, creativity spans way beyond the big idea, as it were. It's not just about the big idea for an ad. It's really touches on all aspects of what you do, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Barry, how about you? What was your...
Yeah, so, back in March of last year, all of our clients, and many of them operated lower funnel, pause messaging. I mean, everybody was looking at what they were saying in the marketplace and thinking, like, is this appropriate? Is this, tone deaf, and so on. And just about every one of our clients changed their messaging and stopped selling and tried to start supporting. And what we realized was that because our business, like our clients' business, had been operated to support them lower funnel, it was a little bit of a stretch for us to help them tell their stories as they moved upper funnel. And so, like, we all know how to do the how, when, and where really, really well. It's the why and the what that I think clients, particularly lower funnel clients, were struggling with. And that's strategy. And that's the ideas. And that's kind of the creativity that Justin was just talking about. And so we doubled down on comms planning, and we were bringing clients a lot of ideas proactively as well to help them move upper funnel and find their voice. And I thought that that was going to be a really big kind of pivot for a lot of clients this year. But then we were in a pitch towards the end of last year. And, we kind of went in there very proudly, and we were talking a lot about the why and the what and sort of blah, blah, blah. And then we lost that pitch. And we lost that pitch to an agency that came in and demoed tools. And they came in and they said, based on this media spend, this is the ROI that you're going to get. And we can model this out from here to, kingdom come. And this is what we guarantee you. And that's who the client went with. And despite the fact that the client wanted help telling their story better, what they really wanted was somebody to give them guarantees around performance. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was a little bit of a rude awakening for us. And so now, as we kind of prepare for pitches, and I guess I shouldn't really say this when there are 80 people online listening, but we're going to double down on our ed tech stack, and we're going to show clients how we can drive performance, because despite what they tell you, I think clients at the end of the day want to know that you're going to drive results, and they want assurances, because they're chasing quarterly, Wall Street numbers, and, they have bosses that are holding their feet to the fire. And, at the end of the day, clients want to drive ROI. So that was sort of my journey from, why and what back down to how, when, and where.
Well, no, it's a great segue into my next question, which has to do specifically with client relationships. And and I've heard sort of both ways on this. I mean, the question is, are you finding client relationships, to your point, Barry, sort of are they becoming more transactional and less consultative than they once were, perhaps? Or is it the other way around, or is it something else? Justin, how about you leading it off?
Yeah, we've found both actually. Clients, there was definitely a moment in 2020 where you had to, I think, in our business, we had to be more transactional, because clients were the feet being held to the fire was real. They didn't really know which way their business was going to go. They were swapping out messaging. They were trying to be empathetic, but then they were also being held accountable for business results at the same time. And so you had to be transactional, because the need to keep the trains on the track and keep moving and be much more into the results and drive business became quite real as we went into Q3 and definitely into Q4. But I would say, though, that at the same time, our client sets in insurance, in retail, in a variety of sectors, they were also looking for the advice of the agency. Like, what are you seeing? Not just what's our view on their business, but also what are you seeing from other clients? Because they wanted the peer-to-peer. They wanted reassurance that they weren't on their own. They wanted to understand from other industries some of the best, if you can call it best practice, the new practices that were happening. And so we were consultative by sharing a lot. We were being consultative by bringing up new ideas and trying new things. But we had to make sure that, we were doubling down on things like relationships with media partners, like making sure that we were being very connected on how we were going to market with whatever the executions were, making sure they were working, making sure that we were just getting the transactions and the operations down pat, but also almost double tracking and having those more strategic conversations. And I think, for us, what we found was that where we were really strong with clients was where we were doing that very well. We were double tracking. And we were helping them get through the maze that was COVID, Q2, Q3, and just staying close to them and helping to relearn with them, because they were really relearning their jobs and the new dynamics that were at play. So you had to be transactional in our experience. We just double tracked that with strategic thought that we did in a very organic way, not rolling out the red carpet, not 150 slides, like ideas, things that we can do, test and learn, being nimble. Sort of really taking it down a peg or two, so it was more accessible.
Did you find yourself answering a lot more sort of panicky midnight calls from clients, wondering what they were going to do about X, Y, and Z?
No, without a question. And also there was a real urge from clients to be more integrated. Are you working with the media partner? Are you working with if it's PR partners or the digital partners? Are you guys all working together as one? There was a call for that, like nonstop. There was just an expectation actually that you were just, getting connected and being smart for the clients. So there were those calls, and we've got a retailer, a massive national retailer in our client set, and their business skyrocketed in e-commerce, but that's a whole new capability that they had to take to the front of their business, backed by the CEO. So there were new conversations around what does the brand mean? How do we drive that and connect that to commerce? And new conversations that, questions that we didn't have. So there were a number of new things that came up, real questions. And we also got really good at partnering. DDB, we can't do that enough with Omnicom and other partners. Just looking at subject matter experts that we could bring in seamlessly and help to answer the questions. Because to be honest, there was no time for faking it. And we're not about faking it. We wanted to make sure that we brought the best in class. And if it wasn't us, then we'd bring in a partner to help do that. Facing clients, nothing in the background, just being a team. We did a lot of that across a number of clients.
Skylar.
Justin, when you talked about partnerships, you made me think about partnerships on the client side that we're seeing. And when you asked the question, Steve, which I think is a great one, how are client relationships changing? I think a lot of the fundamentals are still there. You need to be a great business partner. You need to be a prudent steward of their budget. But now I'm asking, who is our client? It's not always just the CMO. The CIO is now our client, the CTO, the CDO. And looking for the partnerships across the C-suite on the client side is really interesting. I mean, 25% of marketing budgets are going to the CIO or the CTO. And so increasingly, that's our client of the future, and understanding how to talk to them as well as the CMO, as well as the CEO, building the bridge to business from technology is where we see things heading.
Right. I'm guessing there probably weren't many agencies last year that didn't think about upping their game in the commerce area. Would you all agree, or?
Yep,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay. All right, let's see.
Steve, just want to jump in here, so we can let anyone has questions, get that said for the panel. And you guys are great. This is really great information. And I actually do have one. I talk with a lot of different brands, and especially people who are, they're bringing more things in-house, but then they turn to agencies, they turn to specialized agencies, who are specializing in one or two particular things. Is that something of the future? Do you see that happening more so? Any of the above?
I mean,
We
yeah.
do.
Oh, go on, Justin.
No, please go for it, Barry. Go for it.
I mean, I was just going to say yes to all of the above. I think that so much work has become project work, and not even project work. It's clients have an initiative that they need support with, and it might be a one-off initiative, whether it's a conference or a particular product launch or an innovation they want to explore with a particular media partner, and it might not require the same kind of agency relationship, or maybe it just requires a specialist support. And so clients are tapping into that. Clients, I think, are looking for inspiration from lots of different places. I mean, the business is in such a state of flux right now. There is no right answer. There's in-housing, but there's not in-housing. There's transaction and there's consultative. It's like, and I think that we're going to be in this for the next few years. There's just so much upheaval on the platform side, and that is causing upheaval and introspection on the client side and on the agency side, and that's not going to stop for several years.
Justin, you had something you were going to add?
Yeah, just a fun fact. In the last working month, we've had 5 clients wanting to create 5 new models with subject matter expertise, linking into what they're building in-house, coming up with new data-driven models for engagement to spark creativity. Just a number of different models that they want us to help co-create with them and experiment. And so we're in the thick of that. And that's why we're really looking to, we're really focused on partnering as well, because they're asking you questions of us, and they are really curious and getting other views. And we're sort of connecting around our clients in different ways. And, 5 new models, and our teams in the offices are trying to keep up. But, we're just being very open house about it. And it's a sign of clients wanting to move, and also wanting to move with agency partners that they can trust, that are truly connected into their business. And this is, food and beverage, it's retail client, it's insurance, it's a number of different clients where we're creating new models in different sectors. It's also great for the agency, challenging in these times where we're not all together, but it's great for us to sort of take a step back and look at how we service and add value. But it's happening in real time.
And what you say about keeping up, I mean, Skylar, are you experiencing that as well? Because you made a good point, Justin, in saying you're covering all different industries. It's not just one. So you really have to keep on top of things. How are you doing that, Skylar?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Justin. There's so many different models. I mean, keeping up, every client wants something different. So you almost have to address each new scenario. I mean, one of the areas that we are seeing across industry is the studio as a service model, which is clients who don't have an in-house advertising agency or partner, and they want us to actually come in and build the studio, service the studio, help figure out the fundamentals of how clients and the agency people come together to drive innovation, which is a really exciting model to figure out and to pilot with some clients. So, I mean, keeping up, I mean, every day there's something new, and just being great listeners and understanding our clients' business and what they need to accomplish is the best way to keep up.
I agree. Well, you guys, thank you so much. Steve, as always, great moderator, and Justin, Skylar, and Barry, of course, you guys are really wonderful. So it's really great to have you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you.
to
Thanks a
see
lot.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah.